Welcome to Psalm 19. The beautiful Psalm of the heavens begins in the title for the telos, the director, Psalmos to David, a psalm to David. I urani the gunte doxen theu. Peace and they hieron avtu anangeli to stereoma. Imera ti imera erevgete rima, kenix nikti anangeli gnosin. The heavens describe the glory of God. Who do they describe it to? Well, a lot of people see the things in nature that it's more than just an accident. But then there are those who can look and see everything but miss the whole purpose and the point of the creation and think it's one giant accident. But we're not going to go into that argument because right here, David's saying the heavens describe the glory of God. Now, it's interesting, it says heavens in the plural. In 1 Kings 8:27, it calls them the heaven of the heavens. And many people feel like that, well, Paul mentions the going to the third heaven, and many people believe that it is divided into the three, heaven being where one heaven, the first heaven where the birds fly, and then the second heaven would be the cosmos, all the stars and everything, and then the third heaven would be a godly place of God's where he rules and he abides in some form or another. And then about the heavens, it says in 1 Chronicles 16:26, for all the gods of the nations are idols, and the Lord, Kyrios, made the heavens. And so he made them, he created them. Everything is created. I have a little gizmo here I can point with on my finger and move it around on the screen. Well, somebody created it. Everything is created on earth. So if everything is created on earth, then how can it possibly not be that the earth is created? And who created it? Well, again, we're not going to go into that. The creationists are people that are made fun of by evolutionaries and agnostics and so forth. It's sort of sad. I don't think it was always that way. I think a lot of civilizations in the past realized that there was a creation. They may not have known Kyrios, our God, but they knew. But the fool says in his heart there is no God, it says in the Psalms. But then it goes in, it says in Psalms 8:2 that God's majesty is above the heavens. And this is where God dwells, and Jesus calls him his Father in Matthew 18:10. Then Jesus says something interesting. He says that the kingdom of the heavens approaches. He sent people out to tell him that in Israel when he was preaching. Now, how are they the kingdom of the heavens? Now, he's not saying the heavens are coming, but it's a kingdom, a rule of some sort, and the rule of the God in the third heaven, and it comes down into the first and the second heaven, and it approaches in a way that is unimaginable by many people that don't want a king, want nothing to do. They want to do what they want to do, how they want to do it, when they want to do it, and so forth. But Jesus preached and sent those out to say that the kingdom of the heavens approaches. Then he said another amazing thing in Matthew 11:11, and but the lesser in the kingdom of the heavens is greater than him, and the him being John the Baptist. Well, so was John not in the kingdom? It's hard to understand exactly why Jesus is saying that. And then he continues in 11:12, and from the days of John the Baptist until just now, the kingdom of the heavens is forced and is snatched by assailants. So this kingdom on this earth is going through this upheaval of forces that are beyond our recognition, more or less. 13:11 of Matthew, Jesus calls a mystery of the kingdom of the heavens. So there is a mysterion, is the Greek word, to that. And then most of Matthew 13, he goes into the parables about the kingdom of the heavens, and you can read that in Matthew 13. Matthew 16:19, he mentions the keys. There's keys to heaven. And then the disciples were arguing who's the greatest, and Jesus says the greatest in the heavens is the one that's most humble. Matthew 18:1-4. Then it continues, and the firmament, the stereoma. Now, the stereoma announces the making of his hands. The stereoma is an interesting word. If you study it and use our Apostolic Bible app, it starts in Genesis 1:6-8, and it is something that divides the waters. From what I see throughout the Bible, and the description of the firmament is not necessarily always the same thing. It's a firmament. It's what I would consider some type of a dividing force that maybe takes physical form, some type of a form, maybe not necessarily physical in which you can see, but something that, like air, you can't see air, but air is a force. And so it begins something with this firmament, and God probably manipulates it. It divided the waters in Genesis 1:6-8. And then it's also the area that I see that divides the atmosphere and our gravity on Earth from which they call outer space, where there's weightlessness and basically no gravity, very little. And man really can't live there unless it has an artificial environment. And that force, whatever it is, there's something that keeps our atmosphere from just going poof, going out. Why wouldn't it just go poof? Why does it stop at a certain place? Now, I'm not a physicist, and I don't have all the answers. Somebody might say, well, you're really dumb. I know exactly why it doesn't do this, so let us know. But then in Ezekiel 1:22-23, it talks about the living creatures that are with the cherubim, and they're called a zone. So we get the word zoo, and they live under a firmament, some type of a dividing force. And then in Ezekiel 10:1, it says that a throne as like sapphire is above a firmament, or the firmament. So another dividing force, that the living creature is under the firmament, the throne of sapphire is above, but yet they are even higher than, I believe, than the cosmos, which is what we see when we look through a telescope and so forth. And it continues, day to day bubbles up a saying. I like that bubbles up. It's a nice word. It bubbles up a saying. Bloop. And night unto night announces knowledge. We are given information in the day. We see things with the sun, and we can learn certain things because of what the sun does. And then the night arrives, and it acknowledges knowledge also, maybe by the stars. People were able to navigate in years gone by in ships, with sailing ships, with the stars. And they could do very well with the movement of the stars and so forth. And now, what other knowledge is there? Well, we're finding out, because now man has went to the moon and other planets, and went into outer space beyond our solar system. And the things that we will find in the knowledge, by that, we were in infancy. We may find out many things that will affect us. In verse 3, there are not speeches nor words which their voices are not heard. We hear these things of nature all the time. Now, as a quotation here in 4, and a quotation, it's used in Romans 10:18, and I believe it's a figure for the prophets, because it says, "For into all the earth went forth their knell," and there, I believe, it says in Romans, it's talking about the prophets being sent. So the prophets were sent, and unto the ends of the inhabitable world, their words. So the prophets are still proclaiming the wonderful, beautiful things of Kyrios, our God, throughout the world. And it says then, he put his tent in the sun. Well, that's interesting, putting a tent in the sun. Well, a tent in the sun would get burnt up. So the tent would be where he stays, or he lives, or he affects it in some form or other, as being in a tent. And I was talking to a man who, we were talking about the sun, and how the sun, it lights the earth, but it mentions in the Bible that without the sun, God can light the earth. It was in the book of Revelation and in Genesis, the beginning and the end of the Bible. The sun didn't appear, light appeared before the sun. The sun is more of a semi-reflective object that God uses for light, and this light causes things to grow and so forth. Gives us vitamins and all sorts of wonderful things from the sun. And he, as a groom going forth from out of his nuptial chamber, shall exult as a giant running a journey. And now, now exactly who this he is God, as a groom going forth from out of his nuptial chamber shall exult as a giant running a journey. And may not be any certain person, but as this person that fits this description, that he's running around, and from one tip of the heaven is his exiting, and his arrival unto the other tip of the heaven. And there is not one who shall be concealed from his heat. And God is moving around and doing all sorts of things through nature, from the heavens, and going from one place to another, lightning and storms, winds, atmosphere movements, waves moving, one thing after another. There is not one who shall be concealed from his heat. And on the earth definitely does feel his heat. It says in Luke 17:24, "For as the lightning flashing from out of the one place under heaven radiates unto the other place under heaven, so will be also the Son of Man in his day." Now, so that's Luke 17:24. It's talking about Jesus, and Jesus will return in a cloud using nature to come back. And now it changes into judicial terms in verse 7. The law, the nomos, astronomy, the law of stars. The law of the Lord is unblemished, and that is in the first, the second, third, fourth, and fifth books of the Torah, the first 5 books. And then we get into the law of the Lord later in Ezekiel. Things change. And then the law of Jesus is somewhat summed up with loving one another. So the law, God's law, is unblemished. It's perfect. There's no... So if God has a law and it says to do something, then we should be doing it. Otherwise, we're breaking the law. And it's turning souls. And that's interesting. The law is turning souls and can turn them either way, I suppose, towards God or by disobedience away from God. Souls, psychos, I should have highlighted that. We have the word psychology, psych. The martyria, and there's a legal term, a witness or a testimony of the Lord is trustworthy. His testimony by himself or other people that he allows to be a witness, making wise the infants. King James, I believe, has a simple, but making wise the infants. The legal term, judicial term, the ordinances of the Lord are straight. Now, all these judicial terms we're going to go into in more in depth in Psalm 119 when we get there, or you can go. Right now we're at 19, so we have 100 to go. But we will be going through these then. But these ordinances of the Lord are straight. And we have ordinances in a city I live in as far as parking. You have an ordinance as far as you can't park when there's yellow stripe on the curb. And God has ordinances made up within the first 5 books. And they make glad the heart. Well, makes glad the heart if all the ordinances are working well. Hopefully people will be doing everything according to the ordinance, and if that's the case, then everything works well. In front of my house, I live in a heavy area of tourism. Right on the beach is right behind me here, and people right outside are just coming here in droves. There's 15 restaurants within a couple of blocks. A couple of them across the street, down the street, and all over. Next door to me is the tap house of Nye Beach. And so all these places cause all these people to come, and we have the parking stripes, so where people park, and you can park there. And so I'm happy that it's an ordinance that's wonderful, makes everything work well. People park there, but other people park where they're not supposed to and causes a problem. Can park with a yellow and there's a fire hydrant, and if something catches on fire, they might not see it or have to go around this vehicle. The commandment. The commandment is more of like the 10 commandments, thou shalt not and thou shalt. The commandment of the Lord is radiant. That's an interesting word, giving light to the eyes. So his commands, it's like, wow, thou shalt not do this or you shall do that. It's like, well, that's a good way to live by God's commandments. And it gives light to our eyes. It's wonderful. The fear of the Lord is pure, abiding into the eon of the eon. Now, the fear of the Lord, it's a righteous fear, that we fear this Creator who made us, and we need to do the things that He had, and it's a pure thing to have the fear of God. Now, you don't want to be afraid of God because of being chastised and doing sin, doing something wrong. That's sort of a different type of fear, but they're both would be probably termed in under phobos. We have the word phobia comes from that, and it's agonos, pure, abiding into the eon of the eon. So it's going to go on and on and on. Eternal, everlasting, other words that you could use. And then another judicial term, the judgments of the Lord are true. God makes a judgment that this is so-and-so and that's so-and-so and all these things, and it's doing justice to the same, to the people. Good thing to have a righteous judge in the form of the Lord who's going to judge. His judgments are true. And they're desirable above gold, it says, hyper, above, or more than, chrysanthemum comes from that, and precious lithography, poly, much, precious stone. The judgments of the Lord are more desirable than gold and precious stones. Do we want, and sweeter above honey and the honeycomb. Now, the judgments of the Lord, whatever he says, do we look at these things and desire them above gold, precious stones, and are they sweeter above honey and the honeycomb? We might see a little bit right now of the judgments of the Lord, but I believe when we stand in front of him and the judgment of the Lord is that we are guilty of sin, and the ones guilty of sin are going to be sent into outer darkness. And then Jesus comes and says that he paid the price, and this person has done everything to show that he believes and trusts in me, and I've paid the price. And the judgment of the Lord will be, you're free to go with Jesus to his abode. And will you believe that his judgment then is above gold? Way higher than gold. More than any precious stones. It's worth more than anything on the earth to be found innocent by God in his judgment. Sweeter than honey and the honeycomb. It's so going to be so wonderful when we are standing there and we know that we have done the wrong things in our lives, but yet our belief in Jesus has purchased our redemption to be free from the judgment. The righteous judgment for us is going to be wonderful. For also your bondman guards them. We're the bondmen of God, the doulos. We're a bondman. God tied to us. We're tied to God, to Jesus. And we guard these things. And guarding them, there's great reward. All the things of God, there is great reward. If you go through a life without being a bondman to God, and you're just running around willy-nilly and no purpose in life, well, I don't know. I guess you may have certain rewards. You think that if you become rich, but then when they vanish, they're questionable. But we guard the things because we know they'll be eternal. Who shall perceive his transgressions? From out of my private transgressions cleanse me. So we know, we perceive, and we ask for this cleansing that Jesus offers. And from the aliens, spare your bondmen. From people that are different, that are after us, spare your bondmen. If they should not dominate me, then I will be unblemished. People, aliens, somebody that's not of our belief in Jesus Christ, don't let them come and dominate me, so that I would become unblemished. We're attacked constantly, though. And I shall be cleansed of great sin, daily confessing our sins to Jesus. And the oracles of my mouth will be for benevolence. And we went through 4 or 5 Psalms ago about the oracles, which were embroidered work on the chest of Aaron, the high priest, and then the words that came out by people that were God's words. And the meditation of my heart before you, always. O Lord, my helper, and the one ransoming me. Jesus, the one ransoming. Psalms 7, we went into the ransoming of Jesus. You can go back, check out Psalm 7 for information on that. O Lord, my helper, and the one ransoming me. Psalm 20. The name of the Lord is a shield. That's interesting, and we'll find out how that is and what the name means in our next video seminar of Psalm 20. Hope you'll join us. Till then, goodbye.